Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God, back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, as read by Lord Naren White.
Well, we'll let the crybaby go home to his mother, won't we, Huck? Poor thing, does it want to see its mother? And so it shall. You like it here, don't you, Huck? We'll stay, won't we?
Huck said, "Yes," without any heart in it.
I'll never speak to you again as long as I live,
said Joe, rising.
There now.
And he moved moodily away and began to dress himself.
Who cares? Said Tom. Nobody wants you to. Go long home and get laughed at. Oh, you're a nice pirate. Huck and me ain't crybabies. We'll stay. Won't we, Huck? Let him go if he wants to. I reckon we could get along without him, perhaps.
But Tom was uneasy, nevertheless, and was alarmed to see Joe go sullenly on with his dressing. And then it was discomforting to see Huck eyeing Joe's preparations so wistfully, and keeping up such an ominous silence. Presently, without a parting word, Joe began to wade off toward the Illinois shore. Tom's heart began to sink. He glanced at Huck. Huck could not bear the look, and dropped his eyes. Then he said,
I want to go too, Tom. It was getting so lonesome anyway. And now it'll be worse. Let us go too, Tom. I won't. You can all go if you want to. I mean to stay. Tom, I better go. Well, go, Long. Who's hindering you?
Huck began to pick up his scattered clothes. He said,
Tom, I wished you'd come too. Now you think it over. We'll wait for you when we get to shore. Well, you'll wait here to blame a long time, that's all.
Huck started sorrowfully away, and Tom stood looking after him with a strong desire tugging at his heart to yield his pride and to go along too. He hoped the boys would stop, but they still waded slowly on. It suddenly dawned on Tom that it was become very lonely and still. He made one final struggle with his pride and then darted after his comrades, yelling,
Wait! Wait! I want to tell you something.
They presently stopped and turned around. When he got to where they were, he began unfolding his secret, and they listened moodily till at last they saw the point he was driving at. And they set up a war whoop of applause and said it was splendid, and said if he had told them at first they would have started away. He made a plausible excuse, but his real reason had been the fear that not even the secret would keep them with him any very great length of time. So he had meant to hold it in reserve as a last seduction. The lads came gaily back and went at their sports again with a will, chattering all the time about Tom's stupendous plan and admiring the genius of it. After a dainty egg and fish dinner, Tom said he wanted to learn to smoke now. Joe caught at the idea and said he would like to try too. So Huck made pipes and filled them. These novices had never smoked anything before but cigars, made of grapevine, and they bit the tongue, and were not considered manly anyway. Now they stretched themselves out on their elbows and began to puff charily, and with slender confidence. The smoke had an unpleasant taste, and they gagged a little. But Tom said,
Why, it's just as easy. If I knowed this was all, I'd learned long ago. So would I, said Joe. It's just nothing. Why, many a time I've looked at people smoking, and thought, well, I wish I could do that. But I never thought I could, said Tom. That's just the way with me, ain't it, Huck? You've heard me talk just that way, haven't you, Huck? I'll leave it to Huck if I haven't. Yes, heaps of times, said Huck. Well, I have too, said Tom. Oh, hundreds of times. Once down by the slaughterhouse. Don't you remember, Huck? Bob Taylor was there. And just Thatcher. when I said it. Don't you remember, Huck, about me saying that? Yes, that's so, said Huck. That was the day after I lost a White Alley. No, 'twas the day before. There, I told you so, said Tom. Huck recollects it. I believe I could smoke this pipe all day, said Joe. I don't feel sick. Neither do I, said Tom. I could smoke it all day. But I bet you Jeff Thatcher couldn't. Jeff Thatcher? Why, he'd keel over with just 2 draws. Just let him try it once. He'd see. I bet he would. And Johnny Miller. I wish I could see Johnny Miller tackle it once. Oh, don't I, said Joe. Why, I bet you Johnny Miller couldn't any more do this than nothing. Just one little snifter would fetch him. 'Deed it would, Joe. Say, I wish the boys could see us now. So do I. Say, boys, don't say anything about it. And sometime when they're around, I'll come up to you and say, Joe, got a pipe? I want to smoke. And you'll say, kind of careless like, as if it weren't anything, you'll say, yes, I got my old pipe and another strong one, but my tobacco ain't very good. And I'll say, oh, that's all right, if it isn't strong enough. And then you'll out with the pipes, and we'll light up just as Cam, and then just see him look. By jings, that'll be gay, Tom. I wish it were now. So do I. And when we tell 'em we learned when we was off pirating, won't they wish they'd been along? Oh, I reckon not. I'll just bet they will.
So the talk ran on, but presently it began to flag a trifle and grow disjointed. The silences widened. The expectoral rotation marvelously increased. Every pore inside the boys' cheeks became a spouting fountain. They could scarcely bail out the cellars under their tongues fast enough to prevent an inundation. Little overflowings down their throats occurred in spite of all they could do, and sudden retchings followed every time. Both boys were looking very pale and miserable now. Joe's pipe dropped from his nerveless fingers. Tom's followed. Both fountains were going furiously and both pumps bailing with might and main. Joe said feebly, I've lost my knife. I reckon I'd better go and find it. Tom said, with quivering lips and halting utterance, I'll help you. You go over that way, and I'll hunt around by the spring. No, you needn't come, Huck. We can find it. So Huck sat down again and waited an hour. Then he found it lonesome and went to find his comrades. They were wide apart in the woods, both very pale, both fast asleep. But something informed him that if he had any trouble, they had got rid of it. They were not talkative at supper that night. They had a humble look, and when Huck prepared his pipe after the meal, and was going to prepare theirs, they said no. They were not feeling very well. Something they ate at dinner had disagreed with them. About midnight, Joe awoke and called the boys. There was a brooding oppressiveness in the air that seemed to bode something. The boys huddled themselves together and sought the friendly companionship of the fire, though the dull, dead heat of the breathless atmosphere was stifling. They sat, still intent and waiting. The solemn hush continued. Beyond the light of the fire, everything was swallowed up in the blackness of darkness. Presently there came a quivering glow that vaguely revealed the foliage for a moment and then vanished. By and by another came, a little stronger, then another. Then a faint moan came sighing through the branches of the forest, and the boys felt a fleeting night breath upon their cheeks, and shuddered with the fancy that the spirit of the night had gone by. There was a pause. Now a weird flash turned night into day, and showed every little grass blade, separate and distinct, that grew about their feet. And it showed 3 white, startled faces too. A deep peal of thunder went rolling and tumbling down the heavens, and lost itself in sullen ramblings in the distance. A sweep of chilly air passed by, rustling all the leaves and snowing the flaky ashes broadcast about the fire. Another fierce glare lit up the forest, and an instant crash followed that seemed to rend the treetops right over the boys' heads. They clung together in terror in the thick gloom that followed. A few big raindrops fell, pattering upon the leaves.
Quick, boys, go for the tent!
Exclaimed Tom. They sprang away, stumbling over roots and among vines in the dark, no two plunging in the same direction. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.